Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki took part in a meeting of a group of EU countries in The Hague. The meeting was part of preparations for the North Atlantic Alliance Summit in Madrid, which will take place from the 28th to the 30th of June. The participants of the meeting talked about, among other things, the situation in Ukraine and the country's military support.
Including on the need to continue our strong support for Ukraine, both in the short term but also over the longer term. And I look forward to welcoming President Zelensky to address NATO leaders at our summit in Madrid. In response to Russia's invasion, we have reinforced our ability to protect and defend every inch of NATO allied territory. In Madrid, we will take the next steps and agree a major strengthening of our posture. Tonight, we discussed the need for more robust and combat-ready forward presence, even higher readiness, and more pre-positioned equipment and supplies.
Asked critical questions. Are we sufficiently strong in defending our European values? In Ukraine, the Ukrainian soldiers and people of Ukraine fight for the most important European and free world values: sovereignty, freedom, right to live, and other critical values. And I think the answer is no, we are not doing enough. We have not done enough to defend Ukraine, to support Ukrainian people, to defend their freedom and sovereignty.
Meanwhile, a two-day meeting of NATO defence ministers is taking place in Brussels. The head of the Ministry of National Defence, Mariusz Błaszczak, will participate in talks concerning, among others, the adaptation of the Allied defence system, as well as the supply of weapons to Ukraine.
Allies are committed to continue providing the military equipment that Ukraine needs to prevail, including heavy weapons and long-range systems.
United States Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, during a meeting with the Ukrainian Defense Minister Alexei Reznikov, confirmed his support for the armed forces of Ukraine.
By working together, we can help Ukraine defend itself from Russia's cruel assault. And we can strengthen Ukraine's security for the long haul. And we can rally together to show that rules, in fact, do matter.
On the other hand, Deputy Prime Minister Jarosław Kaczynski, in an interview for Gazeta Polska, assessed that the defeat of the West in Ukraine will be more serious than the defeat of the American troops in Vietnam. The president of the Law and Justice Party still does not rule out the possibility of the conflict spreading to other territories. It could come into force as a result of irrational decisions by the authorities in Moscow in the event of a complete defeat at the front, or some turmoil within the power system in Russia. But this is one of the scenarios considered. War always has an element of unpredictability to it. I don't think Russia will be able to start any new war when they are struggling to cope with Ukraine and when they actually have to reduce their ambitions. Also, at this moment, in my opinion, there is no risk of another war in Europe. According to reports from the Italian daily La Stampa, Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi, French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz will visit Kiev this week. While visiting Romania, Macron said that Volodymyr Zelensky would have to sit down at the negotiating table with Vladimir Putin. At some point, after we help Ukraine to resist, we will have to negotiate with Russia. The President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, will have to negotiate, and we Europeans will be at this table. In connection with Russia's aggression against Ukraine, the European Union has asked Israel to reduce its energy dependence on the Kremlin.
Mentioned Russia's war against Ukraine, and it has indeed severe consequences for Europe and far beyond, and we need to work together to address them. The first is indeed that we want to boost our energy cooperation with Israel. The European Union was the biggest, most important client from the supplier Russia, oil, gas and coal. But with the beginning of this war and the attempt of Russia to blackmail us.
Both of us will be discussing ways where the EU and Israel can cooperate on food security, energy and more. In recent years, Israel went from being a gas importer to becoming a gas exporter. And we're currently working to produce natural gas from more natural gas from Israel's economic waters.
Brussels has declared its tenacity to maintain severe sanctions against the Kremlin until the end of hostilities in Ukraine. The Union expresses its readiness to impose further sanctions on Russia. They would include, inter alia, complete suspension of Russian gas and petrochemical products imports.